Hello, this is Economic Performance, Section C, Unemployment, or R. Our prioritized standard is Economic Standard 43. Objectively, you'll be able to distinguish between the different types of unemployment. Now, shocking. Unemployed people are those who are willing and able to work at current wage rates, but do not have jobs. Now, when we talk about unemployment, this actually implies that the nation is not using its scarce resources as effectively as possible. People who are unemployed usually have less income to buy goods and services than those with jobs. Shocking, I know. The government provides income to some unemployed workers until they can find jobs, and that's usually in the form of unemployment benefits. The rate of unemployment is affected by the cost and benefits of searching for a job. Now, the unemployment rate is actually the percentage of the labor force and by labor force, that's composed of people age 16 and over who are either employed or actively seeking work. That's what the labor force is. That is without work, but actively looking for work. So the actual equation, unemployment rate, you take your unemployed workers, which again, either that don't have jobs and are actively looking for work. If you're not actively looking, you're not actually unemployed, divided by labor force, which again is people 16 and over who either have jobs or who are actively looking for jobs. The unemployment rate rises during a recession and is usually a sign that all is not well with the economy. So you notice at this point we had a relatively low unemployment, then it spiked. That was during our most recent recession. So that is something common. Also, because of regional economic differences in labor force and mobility, unemployment rates actually differ across the country. So some places are going to have lower unemployment rates than others, just by that nature. Also, unemployment rates tend to vary among different ages. So generally speaking, the younger you are, the more higher unemployment rate is. A lot of that has to do with your job skills. Races and sexes. And this reflects more discrimination, if we're being perfectly honest. There could be some other parts of that, but discrimination is a part of that. The standard measure of the unemployment rate is actually going to be imperfect. Why the unemployment rate is not a perfect measure? Well, one thing it does not include discouraged workers. So if you have a hard time finding a job and you just give up looking, then based on how they do unemployment rate, congratulations, you're not unemployed anymore because you gave up looking. So sometimes you might see improvements in unemployment rate that might not actually be because of improvement in the economy. It might just be because a bunch of discouraged workers. Another problem with our unemployment rate, it does not weigh part-time and full-time differently. So we see decline in unemployment rate here. That doesn't tell us if these are people with full-time jobs or part-time jobs, though. Another issue with it is that it does not account for differences in the intensity with which people look for jobs. So if you are in a situation where people look for jobs a lot and can't find them, in theory, that could be a much worse economy than one where people don't have jobs, but they don't try very hard either. Now, another economic term, we kind of mentioned this in the past, the full employment. And full employment is when about 95% of the labor force is employed at different points in time. Like when I started teaching, that number was closer to 6%. Now, generally speaking, 5 is kind of the magic number. You have to have lower than 5% unemployment, which means 95% of everybody has a job to be considered at a full employment rate. Now, there are 4 types of unemployment. The first type is frictional unemployment. Now, frictional unemployment is an unavoidable unemployment occurring as people are between jobs. So maybe you had an old job and you're looking for a new job, so it's just kind of that gap in between. Maybe it's because you got fired. Maybe it's because you got laid off. Maybe there was some type of retraining you had to go through. Maybe you just voluntarily determined, I just hate this job, I want a different job. Maybe you just graduated from high school or college and you're just now looking for a job. Whatever the reason is, just kind of that gap period in between jobs. Another type of unemployment is structural unemployment. And this is unemployment caused by changes in how the economy operates. Meaning the economy used to work in a certain way. Now the economy doesn't work in that same way anymore. For instance, coal mining used to be a great job with a lot of job opportunities, peaking at over 850,000 jobs. But then over the years, it has declined in that number. So the structure of the economy is different. There used to be a time when there was a large need for coal miners, but that is not the time that we actually live in anymore. So the structure of the economy can change for lots of reasons. Maybe your present abilities are different. Maybe you don't have the skills necessary to find a job in the workforce. Maybe you weren't trained correctly. Maybe you don't physically live in an area where there are jobs. Just for whatever reasons, the economy is different. How things are done in this economy is different than used to be done, and it doesn't match up for you to be able to find a job. Another type of unemployment, cyclical unemployment. This is unemployment associated with changes in the business cycle. So generally speaking, unemployment rates usually rise when you're in a period of contraction. And unemployment rates usually will decline when you're in a period of expansion. So it's just, if you have cyclical unemployment, it just means I don't have a job because the economy is just doing poorly. When the economy improves, I probably won't be unemployed anymore. So possibly, like sometimes you might get laid off because you're in a period of contraction, and then they might, once they're out of contraction, they might just hire you back. And the last time's really confusing. Seasonal unemployment. This one's unemployment caused by changes in the seasons or weather. So not only does it affect Santa, it also affects like construction workers, farm workers. A lot of times when you're in the cold months, those are times when it's hard to find work. So if you ever work like roofing, people don't usually want to have their roofs ripped apart and have a new roof put on in winter. So if you work those types of jobs, it's usually harder to find work that time of year. The government can adopt policies that attempt to counter specific types of unemployment. There's a couple they don't do, but there's some they can. For instance, policies encouraging education and training programs that can actually help this issue. So people don't have skills in, like people that want to work in mines might not have skills for jobs that exist. So you can actually give them skills, send them back to school, send them through a training program. Another option, if you're not willing to do that, don't increase minimum wage. So both of those things can actually be done to deal with structural unemployment. Also, policies that stimulate aggregate demand, so that will be things like tax cuts, increases in government spending. This can be done when you're suffering from cyclical unemployment. So you give people money. The logic is we're going to give you some money right now so that we can jumpstart this economy and get back to expansion. That is the logic behind it. Should point out, cyclical unemployment, government can't do anything about that. You can't avoid the fact that some people are always going to be in between jobs. That just cannot be avoided. Also, seasonal unemployment, you can't avoid this either. Sometimes it's just going to be a cold season. It's just going to be harder for some people to find work in those kinds of situations. All right, that concludes Economic Performance, Section C, Unemployment Lecture, ROAR. Our prioritized standard again was Economic Standard 43. Objectively, now you can distinguish between the different types of unemployment.